Welcome everybody, my name is Carlos Perez. I'll be presenting today about a module I wrote many years ago called Posh-SSH. How many here have used Posh-SSH before? Wow. Believe it or not, that makes me happy. I'm generally a security person. Most of the tools that I write are for security. In fact, 99% with the exception of this one are security tools. It's typically what I write and work on. In fact, it's kind of funny because I'm so used to presenting on security stuff and hacking and counter-hacking and threat intelligence, nation-state hacking, all of that stuff, that this is my first IT-type presentation, and believe it or not, I'm scared like you have no idea. I feel like a fish out of water. So one of the things I want to cover in this session is why I wrote Posh-SSH initially, what were my ideas and its design. In addition to that, I'll cover what are some of the challenges of running an open source project. Many times we write tools and we're thinking, oh, this tool is for myself. I am of the belief that if I put a tool in the PowerShell gallery, I have kind of like a social contract with the people that will use that tool to maintain that tool and provide support for that tool, because if I put it there and as a community in PowerShell we're pushing people to go to the gallery to find stuff, we should ensure that that environment starts in a very clean way and that we don't bring bad decisions and bad baggage with us and just keep dragging that bad baggage along the way to it. And then I'm going to talk about a bit about the future of the project, what is going to be the next major version, which is going to be breaking feature type sessions. Yes? The PowerPoint? Oh, the hourglass. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So, why did I write Posh-SSH? First thing that happened was I used to work for Tenable Network Security. I was the director of reverse engineering, and one of my tasks was the finding of 0 days among multiple platforms, SCADA system, Windows systems, Linux systems, virtualization system. My job was to find all of those vulnerabilities, and we would then report those to vendors, and at the same time, we would write vulnerability checks for them. And that meant that we had a very large laboratory where we had all kinds of software, and we were constantly spinning up new versions of software, new containers, and doing a lot of tests. And the environment, everybody knew Python. And I'm tool agnostic, but I wanted it to be PowerShell. I wanted to write something to automate stuff in PowerShell. Ended up being that I did not know C#. I went like, you know what? I want to learn C#. I'm going to challenge myself to write automation for our lab in C#. And this was many years ago. In fact, there was not a lot of documentation on how to write PowerShell modules in C# itself. So, as a reverse engineer, what I did is I grabbed all of Microsoft modules back then. PowerShell was not open source. I used a tool called dnSpy and start reverse engineering and decompiling the existing modules and start seeing how they wrote their modules. And I started getting a bit of ideas and mix in with what was back then very bad MSDN documentation. I was able to write my first C# module, and I felt kind of proud of it. And then the PowerShell gallery came along, and I was like, you know what? I think somebody else may find value on this. And I published it to the gallery and completely forgot about it. Then, I would say a year later, I'm in a Slack chat room, and I'm chatting with Lee Holmes and a bunch of other people in the PowerShell community, and Lee Holmes tells me, hey, buddy, congrats on your module. You have 18,000 downloads. And I went like, what are you talking about? What module? And he goes, yeah, Posh-SSH has 18,000 downloads. You're the number 2 in the gallery, and the gallery was very recent. And and forgive my language, I went like, you're shitting me. And he goes like, nah. I go into the gallery, and I see my modules, one of the top ones, and I literally freak out. I start sweating, I get nervous, and I'm going like, that's my first C# module, C# project. That code is horrendous, and people are using it in production. I go like, God, no. And I get even more nervous. And then I go to Alexander and go like, Alexander, people are using this. I'm getting nervous. I included some very basic help in it. What do I do? And he went like, my friend, perfect. Now you have an excuse to write for PowerShell magazine. I was waiting for this opportunity. And like, I wasn't. And I wrote a series of articles in PowerShell magazine on how to use the module, and it blew up. Then I started, from time to time, working on it, started learning a bit more about C#. As an MVP, I got access to the ReCharper tool. That tool is awesome. That tool helped me improve performance almost by 30% on the module just by working on some of the C# stuff and fixing all of my bad assumptions, all of my bad code, all of my bad practices. And the module picked up even more traction after that. So some of the design considerations that I had was that it needed to allow me to automate stuff across multiple servers. That is why I created SSH sessions. So I'm like, well, I know about PowerShell sessions, so I want to be PowerShell-like, so let's work with sessions. And I created PowerShell sessions. And back then, I didn't know how to work sessions. I was trying to understand the Microsoft code behind how they manage the sessions. I ended up going into the VMware PowerCLI module, reverse engineering that, and noticing that they were using an environment variable to save all of the sessions, how they were saving all of the sessions, and I simply reverse engineered that code and figure out how to work with sessions. Remember, we're talking about 6 years ago, so a lot of this stuff wasn't even in SDN, there wasn't even many samples. Then the next thing I did was that in our environment, many of the machines were by password, but most were using OpenSSH keys. So it had to support both of those. Then as a security company, one of the things that we learned is that all of the machines are behind proxy. Our lab is never inside of our internal network. Why? Because we're a company. We have a bunch of software that's printable. Last thing we want is a hacker to come in, hack our lab, and own our entire infrastructure from our lab. So the lab is always isolated. So what we did typically for testing is that not even an out-of-band management, because there's still a channel that they can use to own us on, especially with labs. So what we did is we proxied in. So it had to have proxy support. That was very important for me. The other one, SCP and SFTP support. I needed to not only run commands, but I needed the ability to upload files and download files from that environment. And support for interactive shells. I'm not meaning that I do enter SSH session. Even though a lot of you have asked for it, it is so complex that I wish I had the time to work on it. But thankfully now we have remoting with SSH on that side. My side, it was almost everything automation. For example, if you use a Cisco invoke SSH command inside of Posh-SSH uses SSH exec API. Same API that we use with P-Link inside of the PuTTY or PuTTY framework. PuTTY in Spanish is a bad word. I'll tell you guys outside what it actually means, not here on stage. Somebody knows. PuTTY has this tool called P-Link that allowed me to automate and script stuff. So it uses that same API call, which is actually just, it finds the binary in your path, executes, and it spins up a shell, runs the command, and it closes it. So there's no state ever. Same thing happens with invoke SSH command. So I was getting a bunch of issues in GitHub, some nice emails and nasty emails about it. The people out there, human beings, they can be very nasty with tools, and so that is one of the problems that I find when running an open source project. And then I went like, I need to create a shell. So I started going through the entire library that I'm using, which is SSH.net, and it had support for what is called a shell stream. So I can actually create a stream file that is an actual terminal shell that I can write and read commands from. And I implemented that later on, especially for Cisco devices. Because if you use SSH exec against Cisco devices, you'll run your command, you'll get the output, and then it will kill the entire session. BIOS devices, H3C networking devices, some NetApp devices, some Procurve devices also all behave the same way. You'd be surprised the amount of network engineers that actually use Posh-SSH. That's I would say, the bulk of all of the emails that I get, issues that I get, are networking engineers that are using it to monitor all of their switches, routers, especially when they're using software-defined networks. They use it as an alternate method of doing QA, of automatic configuration of load balancers and all of that stuff. And to me, that's exciting and at the same time scary because I don't have access to that gear for testing, which makes me nervous on that side. Now, also in design, as a security guy, for me, fingerprint verification when working with SSH was important. Believe it or not, I got a lot of crap on people like going, no, I don't want fingerprint verification. And I'm going like, you're connecting to a server where you're passing a bunch of credentials and a bunch of encryption keys and important data, and you don't want to know if you're being man in the middle. And they say no. And that is some of the areas where I had a hard point for a very long time. I'm not budging. But the noise got so big, the emails got so nasty many times, that I simply decided, you know what, if you want to shoot yourself in the foot, I'm going to let you. And I added a parameter that's called -force and another tag accept key, so they can accept the key dynamically if they want, but I'm leaving users just to shoot themselves in the foot if they want to on that one. Keyboard interactive, it is a very weird method. That's what led me initially to do C#. So that is worked via eventing, and almost all of the examples for keyboard interactive were via C#. So that's why the project started there. The library I'm using right now is SSH.net. It is a great library. It's written by a guy called Desmond Ringer. I probably butchered his German name completely. And the library was being updated very frequently until 2 years ago when he got a new job, and he just haven't had time to update the library so often. So now I have a dual function. I want him with the least amount of stress to be able to work on the library. So as soon as issues for SSH.net land of users, I try to furnish and help him with those issues at the same time that I'm furnishing my issues on my module, so he can keep updating his library, so I can keep adding new features to my project. So I'm trying to be a good citizen in the open source world, and we help each other. Now, another thing is I wanted the modules to return objects. That's one of the things for me was important, and the other was, and as I mentioned, support multiple sessions and have a way to identify this. So most objects, I know not all of them do, include the session that actually created. So you're able to know which host the action came from. So enough talking, enough of this stuff. Let's go into the demo of it. So typically for all of the demo stuff, I work with, I'm going to be using credentials. What I'm going to be demoing is I'm going to log into 2 VMs that I have locally using credentials, and then I'm going to log into those VMs using private key, and we'll continue from there. So initially, let's just go. And I'm not using Visual Studio Code because for some reason, if I run some of the commandlets in Visual Studio Code, I get object reference error that I don't get in ISE and in the regular terminal, and I need to find out why. So I'm logging in as Carlos, my password, saving my credentials inside a variable. In fact, I can do just new SSH session. Computer, do I have it up here just to be sure I don't shoot myself? Oh. Let me put the 2 IPs of the host that I'm going to connect to. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect to them. I can actually pass an array of IP addresses that will allow me to connect into the session itself. And it will ask me, do you trust this fingerprint? My case, yes. Do you trust the fingerprint? Yes. Now, anytime I connect again to one of these hosts, it will not ask me again. All of these fingerprint to host associations are saved into the registry. Yes, I know all of the tickets from many of you that you don't like the idea of it being in the registry because it doesn't allow you to work in the Azure console. I know. I'm going to move this into a JSON file or a JSON string that you can actually pass as a parameter if you want for the next version. I've heard you. You've been very, very, very vocal. I'm working on it. So now I have my sessions here. I can actually just do get SSH sessions, and they're going to be there for me. Now, if you want to dive deeper into each one of these sessions, let's do something, and let's do here variable session. I'm going to get SSH session, if I can type. Session ID, I'm going to grab the first one. So now I have this object here. So let's pass it first to get member. So as can people in the back see these texts? Awesome, I want to make sure. So one of the things I do is when you create the session, you will find multiple properties. One of them is a Boolean that says if it is connected or not. You'll have another which is a string that will tell you this is the host that you connected to. And then I actually include the session object itself. If you want more details about your sessions, this is one that I use a lot myself, and I know I have poor documentation. I didn't document this very well there. You can actually just go here into the session object, and let me just pipe this to get member. And we have quite a bit of methods that we can use to go deeper into the rabbit hole if you want, out of the modules that I've already created. So all of a sudden you can create a shell stream disconnect. You can add forward ports if you want. So you can change the send keep alive information of the host, and also you can do even additional checks like is connected, and just check that you're always connected to the host itself. So this is very useful for many people. In fact, just let's do format list property. Yeah. Oh, and if I go here into session connection info, I have even more data if you want to go even deeper. If you want to check, hey, what are the algorithms that I use to connect to this host? You can get that information with the connection info. If I want to check what is my encryption, my HMAC, my host key algorithms that are being supported via my connection, you can get that info also. That is important in some environments when you're doing auditing. And the auditor wants to know specifically how you're connecting to the server itself. In my case, I can see that my current encryption is AES-256, and that in my HMAC is SHA-1, and that the key algorithm that is being negotiated is SSH RSA-1. That was negotiated via the Diffie-Hellman interaction. Also, I can get the server banner. This is sometimes very important for me when you guys open tickets. Many times the first thing I ask is like, they go like, oh, I'm getting this error. I'm going like, what command did you run? And then I wait a week and get a response. I ran this command. And I go like, yeah, but against what? Was it Linux? Was it Windows? Was it a Cisco device? pfSense firewall? I need more info. And then they provide, and we work on that, which is super useful. So also, if I want to get a list of all of the trusted hosts, one of the things I can do is, let's say, get command, module, Posh-SSH, name. Let me look for the trust ones. So one of the things we can do is we can list all of those trusted hosts. I can add new trust information ahead of time for my connections if I want. So if you have all of this stuff in a CSV, you can actually automate that and add all of those hosts into your registry key, so they're there for you to interact with. I can actually just go here and do get SSH trusted host. It's going to pull the host and the fingerprint of that host, and that is against what I'm going to be doing the comparison. And all of that, at the moment, at least at the end of the year, I'm hoping to release version 3.0, and there I'm going to change all of this stuff on how this is actually saved. If I want to connect via keys, I support OpenSSH keys and SSH.com keys. There's no support for PuTTY keys yet in the library itself, so I cannot use those. I decided I'm going to figure out how this is and do it myself. No. Almost 3 weeks later, I went and I have other projects that I have to work on, and I'm it's hard. Crypto is hard. So I'm going to be grabbing my SSH key that I created here and doing 2 extra connections. Now, one of the things that that I have to mention is that when it asks you for credentials, the password that you're giving is not the password of the user. It's the password of the key. The key is what you're using to authenticate. So that is one of the things to remember when you're working with keys. And I'm not Carolas, I'm Carlos. And it failed because the key doesn't exist because I'm running under other user. I should have sacrificed somebody to the demo gods. Here we go. Permission denied, public key. Administrator. Let me just make sure. And did it work? Didn't make the connection. Well, demo gods will want to cooperate with me. I bet if I tried in another VM, it will work. Demo gods have been not nice to me this entire week. More than likely, I was testing some stuff with keys and I overwrote my key this morning. So being nervous of running the script, more than likely, one of the commands that I actually ran was the key generation command, and I overwrote my key. I'll get back to that in a bit. So one of the things that many people have asked me is, hey, Carlos, I want multiple connections. And I want to save them with the credentials and the keys and all of that information. And I go, I want to keep that very secure, so I'm going to require you to enter a master password. That was one of the discussions I was having via email with some users, and also in one issue one time. And they were going no. It's Microsoft, use DP API. And go no. And I tried to explain the dangers of using DP API, like what you use to save your passwords in Chrome, like you use in OpenSSH for Windows. I I perform attack emulation, so I behave like a hacker, so I know how to steal all of that data and how easy it is to steal that info. And they keep telling me, no, you don't get it. It's secure. So let me just give you a demo on why I don't like it. There are multiple reasons, and I think this is, you guys are very technical, so this would be a very good environment to show this, and you will guys will at least understand it versus some IT admins. First of all, DP API, if you're not in a domain, everything's encrypted with AES 256, SHA-2, very secure. If you're in a domain, Microsoft goes like, oh, we want backward compatibility. Let's encrypt the data. Let's use triple DES. So if I go here and do DP API protect, I go data, my secret, password 01 to make it complex, and I tell it to encrypt it. You know, you can recognize a DP API blob because it is always this string here at the beginning. So every time I see 00D08C9D, I know that it is DP API encrypted. And when I go over here, what is the encryption algorithm that got used? By default, triple DES. And when you look at the API doesn't give you an option. So already as a security guy, that gives me the creeps. Like, ugh. I don't like that. Also, people tell me, well, Carlos, the thing is that for them to be able to steal those secrets, they need your clear text password, or they need your SHA-1 password. That means SHA-1 of your password. That means that they have to hack into LSASS. Windows Defender is going to block it. CrowdStrike, Endgame, every vendor out there blocks access to LSASS. They won't get that to steal your secrets. And go like, but it's AD. They're in an AD environment. I can just ask the domain controller. And that's what do you mean? AD is so nice. He wants to be so helpful that if you ask AD from the context of the user, AD, buddy, help me out here. Here's my master key encrypted. Can you decrypt it for me? And AD will use his own private key to decrypt it and go, here you go, Carlos. I want to be helpful. Here's your master key completely decrypted for you. So you go like, So as an attacker, I can actually abuse that. So what I'm going to do here, since I don't want to type, since the Mimikatz doesn't support tab completion, I'm going to write this command here. I'm a hacker. I have to include this in my demos. Sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the user's master key, which is always this in app data, roaming, Microsoft, protect, the SSID of the user, and then the GUID of the master key, and then I'm going to do that RPC, and that will make it go to the domain controller and ask it, hey, decrypt this key for me. And when I run this, it worked. Demo gods, they love me now. So I have my key, and my key is completely decrypted. Now, one of the things I can do is I can look in my cache to see if it is there. DP API cache. Yes, I have my key, and it's decrypted. It's available for me for decryption, and I do DP API SSH. And now any key that has been saved in my SSH agent for Windows OpenSSH is available to me, and I have them there, fully decrypted, not protected with the passphrase. So that's the decrypted key, no protection from the passphrase. So now I can just copy this as an attacker, and I can go to town on your network. So this is I wanted to give the demo because many of you have been very vocal as to why I don't like using DP API. This is why. It's hard to convey in an email or a GitHub issue, so I wanted to demo it. Do you see the dangers of it? Imagine a piece of malware, all of a sudden you double-click it by error or ran in your machine, it stole the keys, exfiltrated that, and you were never the wiser just by accident. This is why I try not to use DP API when possible. So let's look at the object when we issue a command inside of SSH. I'm going to run the command hostname against all sessions. In fact, let me first copy all of the sessions into that variable. Sessions, and I'm going to get SSH session. All of them are there. There are my sessions. Let's go into get member. And the information I'm going to get on them was the one I already showed you guys. Cool, it is there. So invoke SSH command, SSH sessions, command, hostname. And I get the output of each one of them. So I'm telling me, hey, the host is 120.120.101. Output is demo1, and exit status is 0. So I know the exit status of the command. And then each line of the output is broken into an array. So it's easier for you guys to parse that output. So if something is multi-output, for example, let's do IP address. The output there that you're getting is one member of the array per line, which tends to be useful. Now, the problem here is that there's no state. So let's say if I set a variable in the environment, I want to then run another command. I don't have it available to me because every time I run SSH command, it spins up a session and then destroys the session and then runs the other command, and there's no state. So one way I can show you this is I can just do invoke SSH command against the first session. I'm going to check my current directory, pwd. So my current directory is home Carlos. So let's invoke SSH command against that session. Session ID 0, command, and I'm going to do cd/tmp. I'm going to change to temp. Says it was successful. Let's run pwd again. And it doesn't work because there's no state. How many here has been bitten by that? A few. Okay. And then people are really vocal. Only a few were. Oh. So the way that we work around this is that we actually just create a stream. So I'm going to connect here to a ViOS router, which is it's a Viata router. It's a product from that used to be from Brocade that they open source. I'm connecting. I have my connection, and just like any router, everything's config, enter, show interface, set interface value. Just is like its unique shell. So if I want to run a command, since it's using its unique shell, I'm not going to be able to see that. So let's go over here, invoke SSH command, show interfaces, and session 2. Sorry, here. And I didn't get any output. There's no state. And the thing is that since that's a subshell, and SSH exec is just looking at the file system as to what I run, it's not a command of that subshell. So I'm losing that there. So one thing I can actually do, let me go back here. Is I can look at the commands that are for working with streams. So the commands that we have available for working with streams is SSH stream expect action. That is that I'm going to execute something against the stream and when something happens, execute this other thing. The other one is SSH stream expect secure action. That is, let's say you want a sudo or su into an account, you can just pass it a secure string because I don't want that in your history. As a hacker, when we hunt for Azure admins, I love going after PS readline because there's so much nice stuff in PS readline that is left there. So I don't want that to happen for my users. So I have this that is called spec secure action. You don't have to put anything in the clear text in your history. And it will pass that secure string over when it sees a specific prompt. The other one that most people use is invoke SSH stream command, and this will allow you to execute against that stream itself. So let's create a new stream. I'm going to create a new, what's it, 2? Okay. I'm going to create a new session stream. Now, if I go here and look at my stream, shell stream, via get member. If you've worked with memory streams, if you've worked with IO streams, with any stream at all, this is going to be familiar to you. You write to the stream, you check the position of where it writes. Does it still have data? Yes, no. It is the same logic. Now, the thing is that most of my users are not coders. They're IT admins. That's why I wrote all of the other functions to simplify their life when they need to run stuff against these devices. So now I have my stream created. So I'm going to write to my stream the command show interfaces and then a carriage return, so it will execute it. Remember, it's a shell. I have to include that. I run it, and now I can see my router's interfaces as they're running. And I can run other commands. Now I have state. So let's say I run this and configure. In fact, no. Let me not stray away from this script and then mess up the router and then the other demos fail. Let me not get tempted. Another thing that I can actually do is I can use SCP. So I can actually copy files into a folder. In fact, let me just make sure of something here. Since demo gods have been not nice to me. Desktop ls, do I have the sysmon file here? I do not. So let me SCP then AD Explorer, since I don't have the other file. Good thing I checked. So I'm going to, typically I included as a demo EVTX because sometimes what we'll do is we have logstat servers that we use to check logs against for research. So one of the things I find myself uploading to some Linux machines are exported EVTX files over, so I can load that into Elasticsearch and then use Kibana and other tools to do searches. In this case, I'm going to do SCP. I'm uploading to first server. I need to enter my credentials. And now the file has been uploaded. Let me save the file locally now. And we're talking about AD Explorer, so let me call AD Explorer here, new _new.exe. It's case sensitive. So let me, there we go. Now I downloaded the file. If I go into my desktop, I have two versions of AD Explorer, so I was able to upload, download. SCP is one of the fastest methods of doing it. There's a kind of a small quirk that I'm waiting for the library to fix with escaping characters that they haven't fixed yet. There's an open issue on that just in case. Many people will ask me why I don't do, for example, for SFTP, I have get SFTP item. The item can be either a file or a directory. For SCP, I have get SCP folder and SCP file. Main reason for that is that the SCP protocol doesn't know how to differentiate at the other side what type of object you're trying to pull. Is it a directory or is it a file? And then some people tell me, well, Carlos, but you check if it has an extension. If it has an extension, it's a file. If it doesn't, just download it as if it is a directory. The problem is that in Linux world, Mac OS, and other platforms, extensions tends to be only a Microsoft thing, a Windows thing. They're not too common inside of other platforms, other environments, so I cannot use that. Other methods is, oh, but why don't you do it via errors? And I thought, that's a very good idea. If I try to download as a file, and if I get an error, then I try as a directory. If I get an error, I show you an error to yourself. If not, on one of those two, I'll be able to pull it. Until I was talking with somebody in IT where I worked at, and they go like, you'd be an asshole if you did that. And go like, why? You know how many errors would start popping up in my SIM for that? And then I would have to check, triage, and then whitelist all of those. And then as I'm adding new hosts and new information, new users, I would have to whitelist those. That would be painful for me. And I'm like, okay. So that's a bit of my reasoning of why we still have it as file, and also we have it still as folder in that case. So let's look at sessions, SFTP sessions. In fact, let me bring up another VM here that I know that my demos were working initially. Since demo gods hate me today. Let's open, where's my desktop? Let me make it easier for you guys. Let me copy my key and the credentials for the key. Okay, that worked. Let's create some SFTP sessions. Now, SFTP, a lot of people think that SFTP is SSH. It actually just uses SSH as a transport. Just like what we do with PS remoting, when we are doing PS remoting and SSH is a transport, same thing with SFTP. Command not found. Users, Carlos, documents, Posh-SSH, import module, D1, make sure it imports, import it, cool. Let's see if it now works. So tiny. It said Carloa. I gotta learn to type. Even my name. There we go. and I wrote get SFTP location by accident, and that tells me that my location is home Carlos. This is one of the few exceptions where I return only a string and I don't return a full object with location. This is one of the errors that will change on the next version of Posh-SSH. It will return a proper object with a host and other additional info. If I want to get information, get SFTP child item. I wanted to keep that similar to what we have in PowerShell with get child item. And it works very well. As you can see, I can get all of my objects. I get information. In this case, it's Linux, so the information looks just like Linux. Now, I'm getting objects, and each one of these objects, I can do stuff to those objects. So when we look at this, we have multiple properties that I can get set in terms of permissions. Also, I have methods on each one of those if you want to use those. You can move to, you can set permissions. It has properties like full name. You can get the attributes, modify each one of those attributes. You have to set attributes on those. So it is very flexible when you want to work with stuff in the file system. I hope that you guys find that part useful. I can change my location in my environment, just like with any SFTP client. So this one does keep state. I can change to another folder, in this case SMTP. And I can upload, download files. No, I'm in the proper laptop now. So, you guys make me nervous. You're smarter than me. So let's do something. Let's upload with set SFTP item. It's telling me that backup.c still exists there, so I'm going to do tag force, and I'm going to overwrite it. I overwrote it. That was only like 100 megs, so it moved quite quickly. And let me check that the file's there with get SFTP item and then where. So I have that now. So that's kind of like the gist of the module by itself. So mistakes that I did when I started working on this project was I wrote it for myself and I didn't include proper documentation to it. And I placed it outside with proper documentation. That was a big mistake. That is something that I'm trying to correct. And I thought that including help in the module was documentation enough. After talking with several people, now I know that's not documentation enough. That was just the geeky side of my brain thinking that's enough and not thinking of the user. Also, I should have done templates for GitHub issues. That is something that I need to implement, where as you're opening an issue, it's going to ask you if it is a feature request, if it is a bug, and ask you for the proper fields of information there. That would have simplified my life a lot if I've done it from the beginning. So if you're starting a project, do that. I should have done automated testing. Thankfully, Mr. Pester is here. Then Chrissy is also here, and they're helping me on that, on how to deal with app viewer and how to use Pester to see if I can automate all of the testing. I'm not used to doing integration testing, which is what I need for Posh-SSH. And another thing that I learned the hard way, never, ever, ever, ever make a promise in a GitHub issue saying, I'm going to get this to you next week. And then you're banging your head trying to figure out how to fix it, and it's been a month already, and the user's pissed at you because you said that you were going to have it 2 weeks ago. Also, if you promise a feature, make sure that you have prototyped that feature and you know you can deliver on it. Don't promise features if you haven't, at the very least, tested that you can deliver on it. So don't make my mistake. Don't make promises in GitHub issues unless you know you can deliver. Mistakes in code. Better support for the pipeline. Right now, if I do get SSH session and pipe it into invoke command, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the way I wrote those parameters on the other side, they take an array instead of a single object. It's just the type. If I change the type from array to single object, it works perfectly. So I need to fix that. And that's going to be a breaking change because people are now used to saving everything into a single variable and then running it at the other side. But now I have users that all of a sudden are dealing with 10,000 connections, which is mind-boggling that my script that I wrote for 27 servers is now running against 10,000 connections. So to improve that performance, I have to make some changes to better support the pipeline for better memory usage and support. Also, I need to set expectations, and I need to, as I want to do breaking changes, I should have pushed major versions more often. I don't like conflict. I don't like fighting people. And all of a sudden, every time I push a major version, people got angry at me. And I didn't stood my ground on it, and now I'm paying the price for it. If something needs a breaking change, I should have pushed it, and people should learn to pin their major versions in their automated CI systems. And that is something that's going to check in with the next version. I should have done more unit testing, and I should have done documentation on how to submit PRs. Like, don't submit your PR to master, submit it to another branch, at least include a test with your PR, make sure that you're following coding standards, go to the PowerShell best practice and style guide, use those as a base, and then have something like PS readline with those rules run against PRs before they come in. I should have done that, didn't do it, and now I'm paying the price because I need to do it, and I gotta learn about it fast. Also, I need to automate module build and release. That is something that I already did. And that will simplify your life if you learn from my mistake. So in summary, what I want you guys to take out of this session is, if you publish something to the gallery, let's be honest, let's all agree to have kind of like a social contract with people. If we push it out there, people are going to use it. They're going to assume, hey, this person that is putting it in the gallery for other to consume took the time to make sure that most bugs have been addressed, and more than likely this person will support it. So let's just not use the gallery as a dumping ground and turn it into what the JavaScript people are suffering now with Node.js and their stuff. Let's not let that happen with the PowerShell gallery. Set expectations on release tempo of major versions. So do release at the very least 1 or 2 or 3 major versions a year if you have to with breaking changes. I'm not saying just do it on purpose, just if you have major breaking changes, do it. Don't be hesitant of conflict or pushback. People need to learn best practices. Use unit testing and automated testing. I know it sucks. I know it's a lot of work. But believe me, it sucks more when you have to fix stuff. And also, just doing general good practices at the beginning. It will save you a ton of headache in the long run. And before I end, happy birthday, Short. He's one of the members in the audience. It's his birthday today, so happy birthday. So, how long do I have for questions?
So now you have
12 minutes.
12 minutes, but normally 12 minutes after questions.
12 minutes after questions.
No, normally you have now other questions, but otherwise you can make it in the break.
Okay, so questions? If not, we'll go to break early. Yes.
Wait for my. I have more a suggestion for a feature. The possibility to map a PS drive to the SFTP session. So you can copy stuff in bulk over it with other tools like Copy.
Okay, I didn't understand well what you said. You have an issue open for the module on SFTP?
No, it's a suggestion.
What?
Have it as a PS.
Have it as a PS drive. Never written a provider before.
Okay.
I cannot promise that I will deliver it, but I can say that I will look into it
Okay.
to see how complex it would be to create a provider for SFTP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. See, I'm learning. Any other question? Okay. If not, thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.